Well, good evening, everyone. When you hear the words the city of Santa Barbara, what comes to your mind? Maybe you think of our mild climate or beachside location, or the natural beauty of our landscape and flora that's admired by people worldwide. But today we're here to talk about the human-made things, our historic architecture, our many parks and recreation facilities, our streets, sidewalks, and bikeways, our police and fire departments, our many community events and celebrations. These things, our city's infrastructure, define the quality of life for our residents and reveal what we as a community believe is important. And they're also a legacy that we leave for future generations. Consider that today we are direct beneficiaries of 200 years of vision and stewardship of past city leaders, the decisions they made and the action they took to create and preserve our infrastructural assets are in evidence all around us. And now it's our turn. The time has come for us to take a serious look at the state of Santa Barbara's infrastructure, to consider our priorities, and establish a plan to take action to preserve and enhance the things that make a viable community today, and that continue the legacy of stewardship for the Santa Barbara of the future. That's what today's meeting is about. The Santa Barbara City Council, in recognition of the importance of taking deliberate and positive action to plan for the city's needs, appointed a special committee to take community input about needs, expectations, priorities, and funding options. Instead of waiting and letting circumstances dictate our future, we're continuing the legacy of caring citizens taking thoughtful and deliberate action to shape it, because that's what Santa Barbara residents expect and deserve. So today we'll get input from you on your experiences and priorities. And with that, I want to turn it over to Nina Johnson, who will help everyone learn about the condition of our city's basic facilities.
Good evening. Our plan this evening is to bring you up to speed on our various infrastructure needs, and this could easily take hours if we were to cover all of our facility needs. So instead, I'm going to give you a lot of information fast so you can get an understanding of our issues quickly. We're going to review our infrastructure needs with 3 key focus areas to guide us. Our first focus: we live in a historic city, so keeping a viable and functioning city while preserving legacy is important to us. Second, we need to focus on honestly facing reality and making tough decisions. And for tonight, we want to hear from you what's important to you so the City Council can make some tough decisions. Our third focus is maintaining Santa Barbara's high standards and our quality of life. It's our promise to you to make plans for our infrastructure needs based on these 3 focus areas. So let's get started. How do we keep a viable and functioning city while preserving legacy? A legacy of volunteerism surrounds us in every public building. You may not realize how old some of our buildings are. This photo of Alameda Park dates back over 100 years. We're still using that gazebo. Our parks and community centers have been very well loved. For generations, we've made the best use of our streets and public buildings. And today, these buildings are still heavily used by residents and visitors alike. The community leaders of years past built many facilities for us to enjoy Santa Barbara living. We've benefited from the vision and decisions made decades ago, from our public safety buildings to our administrative offices, like City Hall. And now it's our time to act to figure out how do we balance history with progress. To do this, we need to focus on honestly facing reality and making tough decisions. And if you take a look around, we're already making tough decisions. We're seeing signs of losing the battle. Many facilities have been closed due to dangerous conditions and needing urgent repairs. More and more of our public spaces can no longer be enjoyed because they're not safe. They're gated off, roped off. They sit idle, waiting for repairs. Santa Barbara's a real city, not a time capsule. We don't have the resources to save everything. The city's not a museum. So we need to make deliberate choices on what can be saved. And some things are optional, while others are not. So now, after years of triaging funding towards the highest priorities, there are more difficult decisions ahead of us. And we need to ask ourselves, what should be saved and where should we be investing our dollars? You may be asking, how did we get to this place? How is it that there's money to construct a new airline terminal and replace the marinas at the waterfront? At the airport, we rely on passenger boarding fees and federal aviation dollars. At the waterfront, we rely on slipholder fees. We have several city operations like parking and the golf course that pay for themselves with user fees. There are legal restrictions to make sure your airport landing fee stays at the airport, pays for the airport. Your water fee pays for water treatment and water mains, not swimming pools. Across the country, many cities share the same concern of funding the maintenance of basic infrastructure. And then we have mandates to abide by, ADA requirements, building codes. Many of our older structures no longer meet current code. With the economic downturn, our funding tools changed. During the recession, the state eliminated redevelopment agencies, a key financing tool that allowed us to revitalize the downtown and waterfront areas. Chase Palm Park, Paseo Nuevo, the remodel of the fire headquarters on Cabrillo Street, Korea Recreation Center, all paid for with redevelopment funds. $16 million a year of funding we no longer have. One of the best examples of how we've invested our redevelopment funding is State Street. It's in good shape now, but this is a vital retail corridor that will need our attention at some point. It's a street that we enjoy, and it gets a lot of abuse, from the regular foot traffic to the confetti at our celebrations. At some point, the sidewalks will need to be replaced, not to mention the furniture, the streetlights, the trash cans that will also need to be upgraded. Fortunately, many community leaders like Cottage Hospital have already recognized that it's time to modernize outdated facilities and prepare for the future. Thanks to generous donors, our performing arts centers have also been modernized and been brought up to current code. And landmarks like the El Encanto Hotel have been restored so we can continue to enjoy them into the future. The city's also preparing, and we're making smart decisions. We're keeping our fiscal house in order, with the city council adopting a balanced budget each year. And we're stretching our resources as far as we can, with much of the construction you see around town the result of outside grant funding. This includes intersection improvements at the most dangerous intersections, like this one at Anacapa and Carrillo. The replacement of old bridges along Lower Mission Creek, the new roundabout plan for Las Positas and Cliff Drive, the undergrounding of utilities on Cliff Drive. We just received $8 million in grant funds for transportation projects on the east side. So we're getting creative, and we're securing outside grant funds, but we're still only scratching the surface. The West Side Center is a great example. The new parking lot surrounding the community center features state-of-the-art permeable pavers, paid for with grant funds. But step inside, and there are no grant funds to upgrade the building. Grant funds and private dollars have been used to pay for modern, energy-efficient building systems and renewable energy. And as a result, we're seeing a huge savings on our electric bill. But while we've been successful in leveraging outside grant funds, we can't count on these funds into the future, and a gap still remains. Recognizing the cost to repair city facilities, Council adopted a new policy to set aside half of any surplus for our infrastructure needs. This is key, because by not paying attention to our essential improvements and maintenance work, we're changing the quality of life in Santa Barbara. Which brings us to our last area, maintaining Santa Barbara's high standards and our quality of life, to not let it slip. Many of us have made some hard choices to live here because we love the Santa Barbara lifestyle. We need to decide how important it is to keep the things that make living in Santa Barbara special. There's a lot at stake. We're fortunate to live in a world-class city with very high and unique standards. Our public facilities are the very foundation of the lifestyle we cherish. We attend weddings in city parks, listen to concerts with our friends in the summer, take the dog out for a walk on the beach, with the privilege of being able to access it from several locations, going on a hike on a well-maintained trail, taking dance lessons in the Korea Recreation Center, or the popular Zumba class after work. These are the public facilities that make up the Santa Barbara lifestyle. How do we keep Santa Barbara a desirable place to live, work, and visit? Thousands of people from all over the world visit Santa Barbara for our unique shops, natural beauty, so we need to make sure Santa Barbara keeps its luster. Tourism is an engine that drives the city's financial health, so there's a real return on investment in fixing the park bench or preventing our sidewalks from crumbling away. At this point, I want to shift gears and review more of our actual facility needs. So there are 4 major categories of our infrastructure: public safety, historic architecture, transportation, and recreation and access. So, and I already mentioned this is a lot of information coming to you quickly, so let's turn on the fire hose. In the area of public safety, we have a need to modernize police and fire facilities. Our public safety facilities were built to serve the community's needs 50 years ago. and they no longer meet today's standards. At Station 3 on Sola Street, the fire engine can barely fit through the door. There's only an inch of clearance. In a time of crisis, this station backs up 5 other fire stations. Fire technologies have made great advances, but our stations haven't kept up. Our fire stations were built for somebody to keep track of calls with a logbook, and now we have computers and newer technologies that we don't have enough room for. When our stations were built in the 30s and 50s, no one planned for women entering the fire service, so some of our stations lack private accommodations for women. Over at the 1960 police station, staffing levels have grown since then to meet our unique needs, but the building remains the same. In the past decade, we've steadily made progress to ensure seismic safety in a lot of our public buildings, but the police station is not prepared for an earthquake. And this is where we're starting to lose money to quick fixes. We've moved all of the 911 dispatchers out of the basement of the police station and to the top floor of the Granada garage. The price tag to move everyone out and build a functioning 911 call center, $2.3 million. Another quick fix is upgrading the HVAC system that dates back to the 60s. We're losing almost $70,000 a year to inefficient heating and cooling. That's another $2 million to replace it. It's really important for us to move beyond temporary fixes that don't solve our problem. We want to spend our limited resources on preventative maintenance so we can keep our buildings viable for continued use. Next, we need to figure out how to keep our historic buildings viable for continued use into the future. There are many examples, but we can turn first to the Cabrillo Pavilion Arts Center, once the gem of Cabrillo Boulevard. The 1926 historic building has been very well loved, and now with its deteriorating building facade, it deserves some attention. This is a very popular venue for weddings, meetings, and special events upstairs, and then beautiful views from the terrace, but the building is worn. A quick visit for morning coffee at the East Beach Grill, and you're going to see a lot that could be done to restore this facility, from the steps to the drinking fountain. Fortunately, we were able to make use of the last of the redevelopment funds, so a restoration of this facility will soon be underway. Another great example of our historic architecture is the Central Library, this building here downtown. For the last century, the library has been an invaluable resource for the community, helping people read the newspaper and check out books. Today, the library houses more than just books. Homework help, story time, makerspace workshops, computer classes, and countless meetings and events. In this historic building, you can check out any book in the Tri-County area and pick it up the next day, all free of charge. Thanks to the generosity of local philanthropists, the Children's Library will be expanded early next year with more space and shelving for families, but a full-scale interior renovation is still needed. Another frequently used facility is City Hall. The interior of the building has been renovated several times to meet the needs of the decade, but anyone in a wheelchair is going to have difficulty navigating the building with a tiny elevator that doesn't reach the ground floor and restrooms that don't meet ADA requirements. Across town, our 1930 tennis stadium is now being considered for the National Historic Register. But the bleachers in some of the entrances are closed due to dangerous conditions. They're not safe any longer. Another good example for us to decide what to save and what should be lost. In the end, our historic buildings are part of Santa Barbara's charm. We have to recognize that we have a lot of old buildings still in use, so smart investments will keep them viable for continued use, and likely with more modern amenities as well. In the area of transportation, we have a need to maintain safe and functioning streets, sidewalks, and bikeways. In Santa Barbara, I feel lucky to wake up every day to the beauty of the ocean and the mountains. Fortunately, these scenic views are a wonderful distraction from the condition of our roads. Take a look at the street and the cracks in our pavement, and our attempts to fill them look something like a work of art. If we continue this, the implications are anything but beautiful. The city is on a cycle to repair the roads in each neighborhood every 6 years. This is a photo of what appears to be repaving a city street, but it's not. What we're doing is sealing the street, basically painting over the cracks again and again without fixing the cracks underneath. Instead of properly grinding and repaving the roads, we've now grown accustomed to this Band-Aid approach that costs far less and buys us a few more years. Why don't we pay more to repave our streets? Because gas tax revenues aren't growing, while the cost of asphalt has risen sharply. Meanwhile, beyond the basic repair and maintenance of our roadways, many people also have an interest in more modern transportation facilities, like roundabouts. Many people prefer to ride their bike around town and would like to see hitching posts to park their bike, or separate lanes to provide more of a cushion with vehicles. If you ride the bus, you may be interested in more amenities at bus stops. In Santa Barbara, we take great pride in being a walkable city with hundreds of miles of sidewalk. Yet, there are over 100 miles where you may have to walk or run in the street to get to your destination. We've made a lot of progress to fill in the missing gaps, especially providing kids with safe routes to get to school, and installing access ramps to help anyone in a wheelchair or pushing a stroller move about town. But it's a careful balance for us to maintain a network of sidewalks and allow the natural growth of thousands of street trees that create our urban forest. And this problem's costing us. We're losing real money to trip and fall claims. Throughout town, you'll see the solution, patched for safety, but unsightly. Now, some of you might be thinking that some of our older streets and sidewalks are part of Santa Barbara's charm. But there's a fine line between old world ambiance and deteriorated. And we need to provide safe transportation options for everyone, whether you're traveling by vehicle, bike, or on foot. Our last area is the need for smart use and stewardship of our recreation facilities, our parks, beaches, playing fields, swimming pools. It would be nice to leave a day of beach volleyball or finish a triathlon with a clean place to take a shower to wash off the sand. Or hop in the Cabrillo bathhouse and change clothes. We have world-class recreation options without the facilities to match. Easy public access to the ocean is a benefit for all residents. Fortunately for us, these facilities were built to last, but they now need some care. Our ball fields that we share with the school district are overused and in need of upgrades. And throughout the city, we have hundreds of acres of parkland. Some of our parks, the Mission Rose Garden, Alice Keck Park, they get a lot of attention. Meanwhile, our neighborhood parks get very little attention. You'll see signs of disrepair. We've spent our dollars on replacing playground equipment to ensure safety, but that means we've left gaps in the rest of our recreation facilities. Our community centers play an important role for the neighborhoods, providing space for family events and providing social services, but they're far from modern facilities, and they need upgrades to serve the community's needs. That brings my overview to an end, and as you can see, we have many unfunded infrastructure needs. I want to share with you that we've debated how to focus on facing the reality, the cost of upgrading our infrastructure. But we've realized that it's difficult to tally up the cost unless we get this conversation started first and hear what's important to you. So that's what we're here to do tonight, and with that, I'm turning it over to Mayor Schneider.
Thank you. So the good news is we're in beautiful Santa Barbara and we're part of a great legacy. We've benefited from the vision and decisions made decades ago, and now it's our turn to decide how we want to reinvest in our facilities so we can continue to enjoy our quality of life. It's our time to act. The elimination of the redevelopment agency, the loss of federal funding, and less buying power with gas tax revenue has created a gap in infrastructure funding, and now we're dealing with a growing list of facility needs. The reality is to prevent more facilities from closing in the future, make them safe, clean, or more modern, Council will need to reprioritize our current funding, continue to close facilities, or explore additional funding options. The City Council is taking this very seriously, and we want to take action to invest wisely in our buildings before larger things start falling apart. So right now, we're coming to you, as was said earlier, to hear your priorities. Everyone here is using our public facilities in different ways, so we want to know from you what's important. With your feedback, our committee of council members can make recommendations to the full City Council on how to plan for our infrastructure needs. We're passing out some note cards. You should have some note cards to give feedback, and we want to take some time to jot down your notes, and we'll have a basket in the back for you to put them in the basket on your way out, or hold on to them and please send them in. And for now, I think between Councilmember White and myself on the committee, we can open it up to questions and really want to hear what you have to say. So thank you very much for coming today.